If you know, can you please elaborate why did Lovecraft chose from all the pagan deities Dagon to be involved in his novels, which we know uh, Dagon was mentioned a couple of times in the Bible. And also after that, if we can start describing, please, Cthulhu. What were his characteristics? How did he look like? How did it look like? Um, why do we call it cosmic evil? Is there any way it can be conquered? And anything in that sort that comes to your mind. Just floor is yours.
I feel a little bad. I feel you want to do a 4-man conversation. I feel like
I'll get to. I'm down to do some little bit of Leviathan after you're done with that.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you want to talk about Leviathan, that probably actually answers most of the questions in one.
I can connect this. So let me say something here, and we'll go from there. Because it appealed to me when I was looking into this, that in general, it's interesting that arguably his best known monster, Cthulhu, right, has very aquatic, abyssal traits to it, which is the opposite of, at least maybe in a Western mindset or a Christian mindset. You know, you've got angelic sky being kind of stuff, and that's not what this is, right? So broadly, and if you guys want to add some details here, Cthulhu is a hulking entity, sort of a squid-like figure, big red eyes, not really a mouth, but instead tentacles that come down, long appendages. The thing I was reading described them as fins, but they seem to be more arms and legs that end in long claws. Just massive, absolutely massive. Part of the story is there's a ship that approaches and then tries to get away, and it just overpowers the ship. And so very, very big. But there's aquatic imagery. I thought of the abyss right away. You know, things out of the watery undermountain kind of going on, which to me is also where, if you want to talk about massive serpents, Leviathan, that sort of thing, to me, that kind of goes together. Does that make sense? Do you guys want to add any details?
Yeah. So I want to sort of discuss the nature of reality here for a second, specifically kind of from the Judeo-Christian worldview, but also get a little Platonic with it. So we tend to think of, even now we would probably use the terms, even though it's a little bit problematized with what we know about, say, geology, whatever. We think heaven is kind of up and hell or the underworld is down. But what does that mean exactly? Why is one up and why is the other down? So we could think of God as being somehow higher than us. Things up are more real, more alive. So if we think about, say, how C.S. Lewis talks about Aslan's Country, he talks about going farther up and further in, or in his Space Trilogy, how he talks about the Eldila seem to be more transparent and less visible because they're more real and we are less real than them. So there's this idea of this great chain of being where the further up you go, the more real it gets, and the further down you go, the less real it gets. So if we're thinking in those terms, somewhere like the underworld is less real than where we are now. It's less embodied, exists less, there's less life, less reality. And you can go further down and say things get less ordered and less real the further down you go. And in ancient mind, particularly in the ancient Near East, the waters or the abyss were thought to be below in this downward location. In fact, when we talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh has to go to the edge of the world and go across the waters to get to the underworld. And yeah, so when the Bible, for instance, talks about Leviathan, he's a sea serpent, and it's emblematic of chaos. But if we're thinking of things in this sense, then chaos is disordered, less existence, less life, it's less real. And so I think if we're describing kind of eldritch horror from that angle, there an eldritch horror type entity would be something less real, less ordered than us. Something like from the very edges of realness that doesn't accord to the proper ordering of the universe. Like we would be less real, but this would be so far below us that it would break our understanding of order, break our understanding of existence. Is that tracking at all?
I'm with you. I'm just trying to use kind of plain language, but I understand what you're saying. So the reverse of that is you're saying something that's so chaotic that we can't understand it. Similarly, I would say God, Yahweh Almighty is so rational and perfect that also we can't understand it.
Yeah.
We try to rationalize and lay it out, but we can't actually get all the way.
So yeah, we talk about Lovecraftian, the reaction to Lovecraftian stuff. We talk about the Eldritch. The reaction is of this kind of, we use the words terror, but the word terror or awful, those are originally are kind of religious statements about the divine, right? God is described as terrible and awful because this can be a positive thing. This can be like your experience of what we call the numinous, which is something above our understanding. But I think that the eldritch impulse is almost it's the same part of us that's reacting, but it's going in a different direction.
I'm just going to poke a quick hole, though, in your sort of theory, because the constitutive feature of a Lovecraftian horror isn't simply its ultimately chaoticness; it's the fact that it's a creator.
I'm not
explicit on the fact that all of the ordered creation is evolutionary projects by various monstrosities. So,
I'm not. Well, I'm not trying to describe Lovecraft's view here, right? I'm trying to say, can we reach a similar place as Lovecraft did from a Christian worldview? And I'm very much aware that we are kind of in opposition to the Lovecraftian image of the world. Like as you said, like we have like this godlike figure who's this blind fool or dreamer, right? But you can continue, Jordan.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because we're going to get somebody who's really into Lovecraft is going to be like, you guys are way off. This is some Christian interpretation of Lovecraft. I wanted to, I guess, yeah, you are right. And I agree with you. I'm just noting for the recorded record that we know what Lovecraft said.
Yeah, no, this is what I'm describing is not orthodox Lovecraftianism. Like, I don't think we as Christians can use Lovecraft's view to describe Leviathan, but I think Leviathan is evocative of the reaction to a Lovecraftian entity. We would just completely explain its existence or its paradoxical non-existence in a different way.
Etic Lovecraftianism. Is a little funny. Has anyone here read Arthur Machen? No. Machen was a horror writer, fantasy horror writer, friends with or contemporary with Lovecraft. One of about a half dozen people who wrote. Like we accredit cosmic horror to Lovecraft. As Lovecraft himself noted, there were a whole bunch of people doing it at the same time. Algernon Blackwood, Robert E. Howard, who did Conan the Barbarian, C. Barry Quinn, Lord Dunsany, sort of. He's a bit of a predecessor. Arthur Machen, though, is interesting because out of Seabury Quinn is also a Christian, but he's really weird. Arthur Machen was a pious Anglican. Very, very pious Anglican.
Hey, we're all weird. Thank you so much. It's a compliment.
Yeah, Seabury Quinn, I don't want to get into here because that we would be here for he's just a really weird. I love his books. He's the one, if anyone here, I know this is Halloween, but a week from now, 2 weeks from now, he has the funniest book on Santa Claus. It's called Rhodes, A Legend of Christmas. If any of you ever want to see Santa Claus defending the baby Jesus with an axe, it's certainly one of the more unique Christmas books, 1920. But Arthur Machen, was a contemporary of Lovecraft. Very familiar, like the two read each other, they referred to each other. Arthur Machen is best known for having accidentally started the Legend of the Bowmen of Mons. But in his novel, The White People, which is actually about fairies, not white people, he has this whole prologue on the nature of evil. And I always remember it's a really good prologue. It says, sorcery and sanctity, these are the only realities. And I'm just bringing this up to sort of like back up what Zachariah is saying, because he then goes into, he's like, could any of us be friends with Paul, the apostle? Possible. And his answer is probably not. Not because Paul was a bad guy, but because someone who's that holy would appear as utterly abnormal from the perspective of us plebs. Unless somebody here,
Jordan, how do you know I'm not living a holy life? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, unless somebody here would like to tell me they're a saint, in which case I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. As I said, judge favorably. I don't have evidence, so but personally, I'm not a saint. I wish otherwise, but one day at a time. One day at a time.
We need to pray for you after the episode ends.
But yeah, but it's I just sort of mentioning, like, as Zachariah commented, and Arthur Machen sort of points out, like, the saint, and by extension an angel, but he's talking about saints here, would be a truly horrifying individual. We would not like saints. They would not be our friends in any conventional method. Like, they're not going to flip burgers at the grill. And it's sort of this exact same sort of motif that Zachariah is getting at, where, in a way, like, but it's only in sort of the reverse, where you were saying it's so chaotic it appears unreal. On the other hand, we're so unreal, it's utterly incomprehensible to us.
Exactly. We're kind of at the middle of the spectrum, so we can experience the terror and awfulness of the numinous, and the terror and awfulness of the eldritch. And like I said, it's the same part of our soul or part of our brain that's kind of firing, that's feeding us that stuff. Which, back to Lovecraft, I think he rightly pointed out that horror and the religious experience are kind of the same thing, but I think we would just say that there is a difference, but it's along kind of the same chain of being to non-being.
Is it okay if we can please describe briefly who or what is Eldritch, and if we can please start drawing parallels between Leviathan and Cthulhu?
Yeah, I think Eldritch is just Lovecraft's stand-in term for the numinous experience that he's applying to his cosmic horrors, which it's almost kind of wrong, or kind of a gnosis or a knowledge that reality itself is wrong, on gazing on whatever profane or alien monstrosity or carving or creature or text. As Jordan mentioned, it's this understanding that reality is fundamentally wrong. There's also a bit there where comedy kind of comes into that. But yeah, and I think the Wolfman already kind of drew a bit of that parallel there, that both Cthulhu and by extension Dagon, because Lovecraft is operating on the idea of Dagon as a fish deity, which now we know is a bit problematic, more likely a grain deity, but that was kind of the popular conception at the time. So again, aquatic, deep sea, the abysses below Abzu, the great void at the bottom of the world and at the edge of the world, where lurks the underworld and the shades of the dead. That's what's being evoked.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, Lovecraft's views are paradoxically very traditional. Like the primal revelation is something outside our understanding. We just have a totally different perception on what that entails.
Yeah, I think, and you were talking about how Lovecraft is an atheist, but not necessarily the type of atheist we would encounter nowadays. Where I think, again, it seems he problematizes materialism as it's almost too nice, almost too a glass half full, to think that we can understand reality in any meaningful sense.